And then we moved, in which we moved around quite a lot when I was a kid. So you were always just, my mom had this...
She was
her feet
probably
were on fire, and she
borderline
had to
too.
move. So we moved constantly.
And
So you
being
were always the
Gemini, our
nature.
mercurial nature.
That wasn't ever particularly pleasant. Then we moved to Florida, South Florida, when I was about 7 or 8. And again, moved several times. But my mother was quite unpredictable. She was very unpredictable. She was she had the ability to be as cruel as anyone can be.
Is there any mother?
With all of us, that is to say, my sister Christy and my
Cross
brother Danny and my sister Debbie, and also my father. So,
Cross and across. Oh my God, there's 3 of you.
Essentially, she was, she could become quite violent, and she was quite violent, and she was quite cruel, and she...
Poor baby.
Though there was physical abuse, certainly.
I never did that to Cash.
Which could be in the form of an ashtray being flung at you.
The only time I've ever thrown anything is when somebody says, "Don't throw that." I have oppositional defiance disorder. So, like, if I'm in the moment and I can't stand what I'm doing and somebody says something stupid like that, I'm going to do exactly the opposite. Like, Yvonne's like, "Do you know how many times I've told you to do the opposite and you do the opposite of what I tell you to do?" I was like, "Yeah, I know, it's kind of amazing. Why don't you tell me the other way?"
The only thing that one could do, really, was to try to stay out of the line of fire. I started to be able to observe
I want to know about your grandparents. I know you were close to your pop. Me too. But I'm a 3rd generation Gemini, which is why we're going to get it on so well.
And somebody was going to get it.
Well, that and your big black cock. Your big black Cherokee cock.
You mentioned that your mother could be cruel. How could she be cruel?
There were various categories.
Betty Sue got married.
I know Betty Sue. There's physical violence, of course. There's physical abuse. To which she was... that was a constant. That was just a constant.
When did it end?
We were all somewhat shell-shocked. If she just walked past, you'd sort of shield yourself because you didn't know what was going to happen. Excuse me. And so there was the physical abuse, which was a constant. There was...
I always got verbal
abuse. There was quite a lot of name-calling, bullying, making fun of whatever defect, one might have. My brother wore glasses, so of course he was 4 eyes, and his teeth were messed up in the front, so he was buck-toothed as well. And my sister Christy, which this is such a hideous psychological play.
She's got a cunt, so she's not as good as you.
Parents were quite refined. My mother comes from Eastern Kentucky, which is where you grow up in shacks and hollers. And my mother despised my father's parents. And my grandmother's name was Violet. And every now and again you would hear my mother just scream across the house, "Come here, Violet, get in here, Violet." And Christy, my sister, knew very well that that was a deep cut, psychologically, emotionally. But we had to take it, you just had to take the pain. I was born with a very strange, it was a very rare thing in my eye, as the back of the lens is spherical. Normally, it's spherical.
That's why you're so neurotic about your eyewear. I love, and I think my favorite movies when you're a colonel. One of my favorite movies, I should say. But you're only in it for like a hot minute.
When I was about 3, 4, that I had a lazy eye, a wandering eye, and she would call me cockeye, one eye, anything.
I'll call you cockeye.
To get to
You can be cockeyed at me. You're gonna be like, oh, I guess I am a little cockeyed. I'm a little cockeyed over Catherine. Catherine the Great.
Would cease to wander.
Johnny Cat.
She was exercising the muscles.
Johnny
But the
Case.
brain would never learn to see.
Johnny Case.
My vision in my left eye is, I'm legally blind in my left eye. But, so, yeah, the verbal abuse, the psychological abuse was
The PTSD is just so thick.
almost worse than the beatings, because the beatings were just physical pain, and the physical pain you learn to deal with, you learn to accept it, you learn to
Live with it.
But the psychological and emotional abuse, that's what kind of tore us up, I think.
What about your father? What was he like?
I thought that my father was a very kind man. In fact, my father's still alive. He's a very kind man. He's a very quiet man. In fact, he's very shy.
Like you.
Not a confrontational person in any way. And when Betty Sue, my mother, would go off on a tangent.
I'm surprised you didn't have your dad testify, but like you said, he's shy.
And of course, in front of the kids, it was no matter to him.
That's so awful.
He would.
We tried never to fight in front of Cassius, and if we did, then we would kiss and make up. But he doesn't remember that kind of shit.
Never, as she was rationing him with horrible things, he stood there and just looked at her while she delivered the pain, and he swallowed it. He took it.
Please don't do that to me. If I'm like that, there's something wrong with my shunt.
When my father
I know your dad will be so excited to meet mine.
Or hit my mother, or even said a bad thing to my mother. The things that I witnessed were, there were a couple of times when it got too far. that I would see I could see his eyes welling up as he was staring at her, saying nothing. And then the most that he would do is he would punch a wall. I once saw him punch a wall, and
My first husband punched the couch.
His hand because it wasn't drywall.
Yep.
It was,
Exactly.
proper concrete.
When we went to the emergency room at Harbor UCLA, they said they had to reset it again. And when they went back to reset it, they said, "Do you want to use anesthesia?" And I said, "No, let it hurt. You stupid motherfucker."
As a 5-year-old boy, I kept thinking to myself, I kept wondering why.
Miss Yvonne,
How does he?
will you make me some water, please?
And why doesn't he leave it first? But he didn't. He was able to maintain his calm and his composure. He was able to
you the mother?
maintain,
Is it
his
you, mamas?
relationship with his children.
You got big old boobies now. I bet you have some babies underneath this bed.
He was a good man. He is a good man.
You mentioned that you saw your father punch a wall. How many times did you witness that?
I mean, I couldn't count the amount of fights that they had, but I know that I've seen my father strike a wall.
There's only one place I want you hit me. I'm so deep. That's my butt.
Or 3 times.
When
How
did you put your hand on a woman? Chunky monkey, have you got a bunch of babies? Are you hiding babies underneath this bed? You're hiding babies, aren't you, Chunky? I can tell. You're hiding a bunch of babies.
My father was.
You hiding babies, aren't you? Those nipples? Who's got sore nipples?
My father was also, to some degree, at the mercy of Betty Sue. Because if he
Miss Betty Sue, darling.
argued with what she wanted done, and that would just turn into another barrage of hatred towards him. So I can remember my father coming home from work, and maybe I'd gotten a bad report card, or maybe I'd
Are you a bad boy?
School,
You a bad boy, Jacob?
something
He's
like
a bad
that.
boy. He's a
And
bad
my
boy,
father would come
Jacob.
home from work, and the first thing she would say was, "John, take him out there. He gets the belt. Give him the belt." And he wanted to know what it was about, so he'd take me out to the garage, and
Wow.
I forget this white, thick leather 1970s.
Wow.
Thick leather white belt that he would take off, and then he would commence to inflict the punishment on.
He didn't even stop and say, "Well, I don't need to do this." She doesn't need to know. We can just fucking fake it.
I kept telling him I didn't do this. It was another incident.
I fucking hate. There's nothing worse than when your father is convinced you did something wrong and you didn't.
He went through with the punishment.
It's like
anyway.
almost as bad as saying, "I'm gonna do something," and you don't. I fucking hate that shit.
Found out that
That's an alcoholic.
the truth, and that I
What do you
hadn't
want,
done
Chunky Monkey?
what
You want babies?
my
You got a
mom
bunch
said
of babies under the bed?
And he came to me and apologized to me
Good.
for went through with the whipping, the belt. And I have to say, my mom never did wrong. She couldn't. She knew what she knew. She was raised how she was raised. And I had no power to change what was inside of her.
How did your parents' relationship ultimately come to an end, to your understanding?
When my father left, I didn't realize that he had left. He left for... I was 15.
Yvonne?
I left school, and I was a musician. I was playing in clubs and such. And he left for work one morning, just like every day, and was packing his car, and then he left. And then hours later, my mom, Betty Sue, came home from work. It was about 3:30 in the afternoon. And she walked in the door and stopped and just looked around like she felt something. And she just, I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "Your dad is gone." I said, "Well, yeah, I seen him leave for work this morning." She said, No, he's gone, he's gone. And she ran into their bedroom and into their closet, and I followed her, and she opened the door, and there was his side, his rack of clothing and all his belongings were gone. And she was quite upset. And I took her car and drove to my father's work, and I sat down in front of him at 15, and I said, "Listen, it seems as though somebody stole all your clothes out of the closet." And he said, yeah. He said, "I'm done. I can't do it anymore. I can't live it anymore. You're the man now." And
I know I'm the man.
those words didn't quite sit well with me. I didn't feel like I was ready to hear those words. But that's what I got. Then my mom went into a very, very dark place, a very deep, dark depression, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And
Darn it. This happened to me.
One afternoon I woke up, I'd fallen asleep, and I woke up and walked out into the living room, and I saw my mother, like, very feeble,